concrete jungle, nowhere to hide. On every corner, Big Brother's eyes. Hear the sound of war all through the streets. See the face of fear on everyone you meet.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mild's Culture Plate. I am your host, Mild Kevin Miles, and yes, I have a cold. This is why I did not make it to my stream yesterday, and that's why I didn't make it to my stream the day before. Well, the stream the day before was due to a family obligation, so then I postponed it to Sunday. That didn't happen because I frankly could not get out of bed. I've since been hydrating like heck. My Slim Chickens cup here. Anyway, so I've been drinking a bunch of water and not whiskey. So I'm not drinking whiskey today. I'm sorry. I did just go out and buy a nice big bottle of Jefferson's Ocean for the holiday. I liked it. My family liked it. And I was gifted a nice bottle of Crown Royal during the holidays, so I'm probably going to be cracking that open here on live stream soon. But as for today, we've got Twitter files. I've been having trouble keeping up with the number. I'm assuming we're at 10 now. I have the ones that I failed to get into: Wednesday by Lee Fang, and then we have Christmas Eve from Matt Taibbi. And then we have 7 hours ago from David Zweig. So I'm assuming we have 3 batches of Twitter files to get into. I'm going to touch lightly on the defense and closing arguments of the Lake versus Maricopa. Now, the judge dismissed that case. That case will not be moving forward. There will be no further hearings in the Maricopa County election issues. So let's go ahead and slide away from that real quick, and let's get right into the Thread Reader app. See, the last couple times I've been doing a lot of scrolling and clicking and scrolling and clicking. Today I'm going to use Thread Reader. Yeah, here we go. Lee Fang, Twitter files part 8. Okay, got to resize this here in the broadcast software. Oh, still got to do more resizing. That's what happens when you have a huge freaking monitor and the resolution goes wonky. Anyway, okay, so Twitter files part 8. I'm going to burn through this as quickly as possible. And nope, that's not going to work. Okay, so how Twitter quietly aided the Pentagon's covert PSYOP campaign. Twitter's claimed for years that they make concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed platform manipulation. By the way, if you're here, say hi to me in the chat. Feel free to chat with me. I'll chat back. If you're not here live, leave a comment below down in the comments. Just tell me happy holidays. And happy holidays to everyone watching, by the way. I hope you had a decent Christmas, and I hope New Year's, and today is Boxing Day. I hope you all have a good holiday season. Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and all that. Anyway, Twitter has claimed for years they make concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed platform manipulation. Here is Twitter testifying to Congress about its pledge to rapidly identify and shut down all state-backed covert information operations and deceptive propaganda. So this is from, I'm assuming, the old Twitter TOS. Combating attempts to interfere in conversations on Twitter remains a top priority for the company, and we continue to invest heavily in our detection, disruption, and transparency efforts related to state-backed Information operations. Our goal is to remove bad faith actors and advance public understanding of these critical topics. Twitter denies state-backed information operations as coordinated platform manipulation efforts that can be attributed with a high degree of confidence to state-affiliated actors. State-backed information operations are typically associated with misleading, deceptive, and spammy behavior. These behaviors differentiate coordinated manipulative behavior from legitimate speech on behalf of individuals and political parties. Whenever we identify inauthentic activity on Twitter that meets our definition of an information operation, which we're able to confidently attribute to actors associated with a government, we share comprehensive data about this activity. Okay, now back to the thread. But behind the scenes, Twitter gave approval and special protection to the U.S. military's online psychological influence operations. Despite knowledge that Pentagon propaganda accounts use covert identities, Twitter did not suspend many for around 2 years or more, and some remain active. In 2017, a U.S. CENTCOM official sent Twitter a list of 52 Arab language accounts we use to amplify certain messages. The official asked for priority service for 6 accounts, verification for 1, and whitelist abilities for the others. And of course, Twitter replied here, thanks, sure is tough to do web ops when you can't tweet. Our SOCOM guys mentioned that they'd love to come up for a meet with a face-to-face talk. Okay, how do I get back out of this? Oh, okay, this just opened a new window. Okay. The same day CENTCOM sent the list, Twitter officials used a tool to grant a special whitelist tag that essentially provides verification status to the accounts without the blue check, meaning they're exempt from spam abuse flags more visibly or likely to trend on hashtags. I accidentally clicked it. The CENTCOM accounts on the list tweeted frequently about U.S. military priorities in the Middle East, including promoting anti-Iran messages, promotion of Saudi Arabia, U.S.-backed war in Yemen, and accurate U.S. drone strikes that claim to only hit terrorists. CENTCOM then shifted strategies and deleted disclosures of ties to the Twitter accounts. The bios of the accounts changed seemingly to organic profiles. One bio read Euphrates Pulse, another used an apparent deepfake profile pic and claimed to be a source of Iraqi opinion. One Twitter official who spoke to me said he feels deceived by the covert shift. Still, many emails from throughout 2020 show that high-level Twitter execs were well aware of DoD's vast network of fake accounts and covert propaganda and did not suspend the accounts. For example, Twitter lawyer Jim Baker, that name that keeps coming up there, mused in a July 2020 email about an upcoming DoD meeting that the Pentagon used poor tradecraft in setting up its network and were seeking strategies for not exposing the accounts that are linked to each other or the DoD or the USG. Excuse me, hang on. All right, sorry about that. Stacia Cardill, another Twitter attorney, replied that the Pentagon wanted a SCIF and may want to retroactively classify social media activities to obfuscate their activity in the space, and that this may represent an overclassification to avoid embarrassment. Pretty much what it says in the email. In several other 2020 emails, high-level Twitter executives and lawyers discussed the covert network and even recirculated the 2017 list from CENTCOM and shared another list of 157 undisclosed Pentagon accounts, mostly focused in the Middle East military issues. Propaganda. It's all fake. It's all fake. And, you know, if there are this many users, 157 plus, well, the original was, 15? You know, people, the chatter overseas in Arab and Muslim countries. If 175 Twitter accounts are being ran by the U.S. government, think about how many times you've been ratioed over something seemingly harmless. In a May 2020 email, Twitter's Lisa Roman emailed the DoD with 2 lists. One list was accounts previously provided to us, and another list Twitter detected. The accounts tweeted in Russian and Arabic on U.S. military issues in Syria, ISIS, and many also did not disclose Pentagon ties. Thank you again for your time yesterday. As discussed, attached is a spreadsheet with the accounts we described on our call. The first tab lists those accounts previously provided to us, and the second, associated accounts that Twitter has discovered. Please note that the second tab is not intended to be an exhaustive list, and if DoD is aware of additional associated accounts which may violate our rules, those should be included in the scope of our request. I'd be grateful if you would confirm receipt that you're able to access this spreadsheet without issue. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding this information. Best, Lisa. Many of these secretive U.S. military propaganda accounts, despite detection by Twitter as late as 2020, but potentially earlier, continued tweeting through this year, some not suspended until May 2022 or later. So they've been up for over a year and a half after Twitter knew they existed. In August 2022, a Stanford Internet Observatory reported a report exposed a U.S. military covert propaganda network on Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and other apps using fake news portals and deepfake images and memes against U.S. foreign adversaries. Oh, and here's the Graphica study. Yeah, we might be covering that in a future live stream here. I'm going to go ahead and put that aside for now. The U.S. propaganda network relentlessly pushed narratives against Russia, China, and other foreign countries. They accused Iran of threatening Iraq's water security and flooding the country with crystal meth, and of harvesting the organs of Afghan refugees. Gotta love that. What a noble cause for the U.S. military. The Stanford report did not identify all the accounts in the network, but one they did name was the exact same Twitter account. CENTCOM asked for the whitelist privileges in its 2017 email. Verified by Twitter's internal tools, the account used an AI-created deepfake image. Wow. Subsequent reporting, Twitter was cast as an unbiased hero for removing a network of fake user accounts promoting Western policy positions. Media covering the story described Twitter as evenly applying its policies and proactive in suspending the DoD network. Oh, excuse me. The reality is much more murky. Twitter actively assisted CENTCOM's network going back to 2017, and as late as 2020, knew these accounts were covert / designed to deceive, to manipulate the discourse, a violation of Twitter's policies and promises they waited years to suspend. Twitter's comms team was closely in touch with reporters working to minimize Twitter's role. When the Washington Post reported on the scandal, Twitter officials congratulated each other because the story did not mention any Twitter employees and focused largely on the Pentagon. Thank you for the flag, Katie. Got it. Thanks. Acknowledged. Thank you. Hope you're well. Wanted to give you a heads up. The Washington Post will be publishing a piece, most likely this weekend, that sheds more light on the U.S. government aspects of the recent Graphica Stanford report about tech companies removing U.S.-based influence campaigns. It's a story that mostly focused on DoD and Facebook. However, there are a couple of lines that reference us alongside Facebook that we reached out to them in a meeting. We don't think they'll tie it to anything Mudge-related or name any Twitter employees. We declined to comment. I suspect this piece will get more attention in Washington with the DoD angle. We'll keep you posted. Thanks for doing all that. You could to manage this one. It didn't seem to get too much traction beyond Verge, CNN, and WAPO editors promoting. Here's the piece. Think it turned out as expected. Okay, so, Twitter patting itself on the back for staying out of the news on corrupt working with the Pentagon here. The conduct with U.S. military's covert network stands in stark contrast with how Twitter has boasted about rapidly identifying and taking down covert accounts tied to state-backed influence operations, including Thailand, Russia, Venezuela, and others since 2016. Here's my reported piece. So this would be Li Fang, right? Yeah, Li Fang. Okay, where did it go? In The Intercept, with more detail, I was given access to Twitter for a few days. I signed and agreed to nothing. Twitter had no input into anything I did or wrote. The searches were carried out by a Twitter attorney, so what I saw could be limited. If you want details about how I go about my reporting, sign up for Substack, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's Li Fang's Substack. Excuse me. Yeah. So that was Twitter Files number 8. That seemed to be a shorter one. We'll go ahead and jump right into number 9 here. Okay, Matt Taibbi. The Twitter Files, Twitter and government agencies. I'm assuming this is number 9. If it's not number 9, somebody please correct me. And again, if you're in chat, feel free to say whatever. I'm assuming this is number 9, judging by the dates on some of these. That's all I can do is assume. Whoa. I feel like I missed one somewhere, but I don't. Upon some of my research, there seems to have been a mess up with the numbering that started with some parodies and has looped its way back to the official Twitter Files. Like there were a bunch of parodies that claimed they were number 8 and number 9, and they were fake. And some were being critical of Twitter and the Twitter Files, and feel free to go look those up. I'm not going to cover them here on my show, but definitely some of them were being critical of Twitter and critical of perhaps current relationships between government and Twitter. But I'm just trying to report on the current and official ones. Give me just a second. All right, sorry about that. Gotta keep keep some of that out of the stream here. Okay, so Twitter Files, Twitter and other government agencies. After weeks of Twitter Files reports detailing close coordination between the FBI and Twitter in moderating social media content, the Bureau issued a statement Wednesday. It didn't refute allegations. Instead, it decried conspiracy theorists publishing misinformation whose sole aim is to discredit the agency. We all know. Now, let me just take a second to remind you that the FBI worked closely with the ATF in the horrible tragedy known as Waco. The FBI was involved in the 1996 World Trade Center operation in trying to get the terrorist a fake bomb. Go look it up. The FBI has continued to have a hand in so many important tragedies in the United States since then. Nobody needs to discredit the FBI because the FBI discredits themselves on a yearly basis. From failing to investigate Larry Nassar, failing to investigate Epstein, failing to investigate the Hunter Biden laptop. And they want you to believe that somehow they're not already a discredited agency? They must think us okay, so number 3, they must think us unambitious if our sole aim is to discredit the FBI. After all, a whole range of government agencies discredit themselves in the Twitter files. Why stop with the one? The files show FBI acting as doormen to a vast program of social media surveillance and censorship encompassing agencies across the federal government, from the State Department to the Pentagon to your favorite 3-letter word, CIA. The operation is far bigger than the reported 80 members of the Foreign Influence Task Force, which also facilitates requests from a wide array of smaller actors, from local cops to media to state governments. Twitter had so much contact with so many agencies that executives lost track. Is today the DOD and tomorrow the FBI? Is it the weekly call or the monthly meeting? It was dizzying. Yo. Should the prep call be you plus blank and blank? Thanks. No, that's a different group. We'll reply to that in a second. Would it be possible for you to add blank and blank to the invite for the monthly industry call? Thanks, yo. Chief end result was that thousands of official reports flowed to Twitter from all over through the FITF and the FBI's San Francisco field office. On June 29, 2020, FBI agent Elvis Chan wrote to a pair of Twitter executives asking if he could invite an OGA to an upcoming conference. Stacia, I wanted to follow up to see if I could forward this invitation to an OGA. Specifically, the people from Blank's former employer were inquiring. Hope all is well. Thanks. Regards, Elvis. OGA, or other governmental organization, can be a euphemism for CIA, according to multiple former intelligence officials and contractors. Chuckles 1, they think it's mysterious, but it's just conspicuous. Other government agency, the place I worked for 27 years, says retired CIA officer Ray McGovern. It was an open secret at Twitter that one of its executives was ex-CIA, which is why Chan referred to that executive's former employer. The first Twitter executive abandoned any pretense to stealth and emailed that the employee used to work for the CIA, so that's Elvis's question. A senior legal executive, Stacia Cardill, whose alertness stood out among Twitter leaders, replied, I know, and I thought my silence was understood. Cardill then passes on conference details to the recently hired ex-FBI lawyer Jim Baker. Sunlight conference tomorrow. No need for you to attend. Carnegie is doing the heavy lift. I offered to assist Nick and Yoel, but there are no academic papers to review or anything. I was involved in the early scoping of the joint project as well. I invited the FBI, and I believe the CIA will virtually attend too. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, Stacia. I invited the FBI, and the CIA will virtually attend too. No need for you to attend. The government, I keep clicking it. Government was in constant contact not just with Twitter, but virtually every major tech firm. These included Facebook, Microsoft, Verizon, Reddit, even Pinterest. Oh my God, the FBI wants to know what your grandmother's cookie recipe is. They're on Pinterest. Industry players also had regular meetings with the government. One of the most common forums was a regular meeting of the multi-agency Foreign Influence Task Force, attended by spates of executives, FBI personnel, and nearly always one or two attendees marked OGA. Just look at that. Look at that redaction. San Francisco FBI. Was this Philadelphia FBI? I don't know what CYD is. Look at all these feds up in your Twitter. All these feds up in your Twitter. Trying to create a task force of foreign influence. The Foreign Influence Task Force meeting agenda is virtually always included at or near the beginning an OGA briefing, usually about foreign matters. Hold that thought. I know it's bananas right now over there. I'm wondering if we can get something on the calendar for the next rounds of ITF meetings here, the open dates and times we have left. Oh, look, Russia status OGA briefing. Oh, Russia. Software and influence campaign against Ukraine. Yeah, because Russians are using Twitter to hack Ukraine. Excuse me. Despite its official remit being foreign influence, the FITF and the San Francisco FBI office became conduit for mountains of domestic moderation requests from governments and even local police. So you got to end to Twitter. Just email your local San Francisco FBI agent, and he's got an end to Twitter to ban that guy you got in an argument with that one time, that right-winger. Many requests arrived via teleporter, a one-way platform in which many communications were timed to vanish. Especially as the election approached in 2020, the FBI FITF overwhelmed Twitter with requests, sending lists of hundreds of problem accounts. Yeah, could you see the below form from our global unit and let us know what you think? Thanks, regards, Elvis. And then here's a good number of those Twitter accounts. I'm surprised none of my friends are on there. Huh. The FBI San Francisco Emergency Operations Center sent us the attached report of 207 tweets they believe may be in violation of our policy. Spreadsheet attached. Thank you, Stacia. Email after email came from the San Francisco office heading into the election, and we saw these with the previous. We saw some of this with the previous Twitter files where they were butthurt over people saying vote Wednesday. There were so many government requests, Twitter employees had to improvise a system for prioritizing and triaging them. We're having some issues with the backlog impacting our elections efforts. The folks on this email represent the DC public policy, legal, and comms teams working on elections. Generally, we're the ones escalating high priority content, whether it's high profile or coming directly from governmental partners, specifically policy, and I escalate reports from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and state election officials, or the Election Integrity Project run by Alex Stamos. Comms escalates a lot of content tied to press inquiries about election issues. Is there some way we can figure out an accommodation to prioritize the reports we escalate, particularly in light of the deprecation of go/elections escalations? Though every tweet is valued, I believe it's likely our reports are the most credible, and most urgent, at least for the next week. Really appreciate any assistance or guidance you provide. The FBI was clearly tailoring searches to Twitter's policies. FBI complaints were almost always depicted somewhere as a possible terms of service violation, even in the subject line. Twitter executives noticed the FBI appearing to be assigning personnel to look for Twitter violations. They have some folks, so again, going back, they didn't have time to investigate Nasser. They didn't have time to investigate Epstein. They didn't have time to look at Hunter Biden's laptop, but they had time to curate Twitter for people making jokes about voting on Wednesday. They have some folks in the Baltimore field office and at HQ that are doing just keyword searches for violation. This is probably the 10th request I've dealt with in the last 5 days, remarked Cardinal. I never typically include a huge distribution on it because there wasn't really a need for this kind of visibility. Let me know if you have any other questions. Even ex-FBI lawyer Jim Baker agreed it's odd that they're searching for violations of our policies. New York FBI office even sent requests for user IDs and handles of a long list of accounts named in a Daily Beast article. Senior executives say they are supportive and completely comfortable doing so. One moment. It seemed to strike no one as strange that a foreign influence task force was forwarding thousands of mostly domestic reports. So here's, where the plots kind of converge here, along with DHS about the fringiest material. Foreign meddling had been the ostensible justification for expanded moderation since platforms like Twitter were dragged to the hill by the Senate in 2017. And yes, I did see this previous screenshot here. I'm not going to mention it because we are on YouTube and we don't talk about those two things right there. Tech executives are contrite about election meddling, but make few promises on Capitol Hill. Yet behind the scenes, Twitter executives struggled against government claims of foreign interference supposedly occurring on their platform and others. The Twitter files show execs under constant pressure to validate theories of foreign influence and are unable to find evidence for key assertions. Found no links to Russia, says one analyst, but suggests he could brainstorm to find a stronger connection. Wow. Could be a Russian proxy, blah, blah, blah. Could brainstorm, see if we can dig even deeper and find a stronger connection. Extremely tenuous, circumstantial chance of being related, says another. No real matches using this info, says former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth in another case, noting that some links were clearly Russian, but another was a house rental in South Carolina. What? Not really anything worth talking about, but there are two personas linked to two clusters they might be interested in. Both appear to be Russian-like names. However, I wouldn't even call that a slam dunk since it was based on IP data, and I think at least one of the returned accounts from the IP data doesn't look at all related. In another case, Roth concludes a series of Venezuelan pro-Maduro accounts are unrelated to Russia's Internet Research Agency because they're too high volume. Thanks for reaching out. A couple things from a quick review of this data. A few of the accounts whose tweets appear in your list are not IRA Russia linked. February 19th, we re-released our IRA linked data sets, excluding a number of accounts that were operated out of Venezuela. These accounts were extremely high volume tweeters, generally using automation in a way that was pretty uncharacteristic of a lot of the other IRA activity. We have very high confidence that they're not linked to the IRA or Russian activity in any form. The current official data sets you can download from us do not include these accounts in the RU archive. Instead, include them in a January 2019 release of Venezuelan activity titled Venezuela, set to 764 accounts. So not only are they looking for Russian links, they're databasing the Russian links they find and the Venezuelan links they find. I mean, sure, there's probably a database that goes by your tweet location or whatever, but this deep? We had to exclude them due to legal constraints, but again, the volume there should be a very small part of the overall RU activity. If you see something different after excluding the Venezuelan accounts, let me know and I'll dig back in. Thanks, Yoel. The Venezuelans were extremely high-volume tweeters, pretty uncharacteristic of a lot of other IRA activity. In a key email, news that the State Department was making a wobbly public assertion of Russian influence led an executive, the same one with the OGA pass, to make a damning admission. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I generally left it be, waiting for more evidence, he says. Our window on that is closing, given that government partners are becoming more aggressive on attribution. Translation: more aggressive government partners had closed Twitter's window of independence. InfoBricks is an entity that we've received previous notice on, though if recollection serves, government partners have never been so specific as to say it was directly controlled by the GRU. BRICS is an inherently Russia-dominated economic organization, so it was always likely that a website and Twitter account designed to promote it would be directed by the Kremlin. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I've generally left it be, waiting for more evidence. Okay. Rebel Inside was a new one for me too. Not even sure what the goal of the account could possibly be other than to highlight unrest in other areas of the world besides Russia. I've already suspended it and marked its domain as unsafe. Wow, okay, so they've suspended 2 accounts that weren't linked to Russia. Other government agencies ended up sharing intelligence with the FBI, or through the FBI and ITF, not just with Twitter, but Yahoo, Twitch, Cloudflare, LinkedIn, even Wikimedia. So remember that next time you give a donation to any of those organizations. Former other governmental agency agent and whistleblower John Kirikow believes he recognizes the formatting of these reports. Looks right on to me, noting that what was cut off above the tear line was the originating CIA office and all the copied offices. Many people wonder if internet platforms receive direction from intelligence agencies about moderation of foreign policy news stories. It appears that Twitter did, in some cases by way of the FITF and FBI. These reports are far more factually controversial than its domestic counterparts. One intel report lists accounts tied to Ukraine neo-Nazi propaganda. This includes assertion that Joe Biden helped orchestrate a coup in 2014 and put his son on the board of Burisma. This is pretty interesting stuff. I might have to save these 2 screenshots for later. Yeah, Biden, the architect of 2014 ousting of leader with 90% support of U.S.-backed neo-Nazis, and then put his son on the board of Burisma. Yeah, this could be pretty fun stuff to read later. I'm going to have to check that out. Another report asserts a list of accounts accusing the Biden administration of corruption in vaccine distribution are part of a Russian influence campaign. We also assess with high confidence that the IRA was responsible in mid-February 22 for producing and placing in media, social media information in multiple languages to include French, English, and Spanish on the following 2 narratives. That Western Europeans and Africa were not acting in the best interests of African nations and specifically were involved in intimidation, coercion, and blackmail in the Sahel zone and were not interested in helping fight terrorism in the Sahel. The Biden administration was selling better places in the COVID-19 vaccine queue to countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Therefore, U.S. corruption was influencing the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Often, intelligence came in the form of brief reports followed by long lists of accounts that they deemed to be pro-Maduro, pro-Cuba, pro-Russia, etc. This one batch had over 1,000 accounts marked for digital execution. Wow. One report says a site documenting purported rights abuses committed by Ukrainians is directed by Russian agents. Directed by Main Intelligence Directorate. Okay. Intel about the shady origin of these accounts might be true, but so might at least some of the information in them. About neo-Nazis, rights abuses in Donbass, even about our own government. Should we block such material? This is a difficult speech dilemma. Should the government be allowed to try to prevent Americans and others from seeing pro-Maduro or anti-Ukrainian accounts? Often Intel reports are just a long list of newspapers, tweets, or YouTube videos guilty of anti-Ukraine narratives. And look at all the YouTube channels and Twitter accounts slated to be censored for not following the Ukraine narrative here. Sometimes, not always, Twitter and YouTube block the accounts, but now we know for sure what Roth meant by the Bureau and by extension the IC. Intelligence community. The questions we received are attached. I'm frankly perplexed by the requests here, which seem more like something we'd get from a congressional committee than the Bureau. There's a big discussion to be had about state-controlled media, which will be impacted by the label launch later this month. I'm not particularly comfortable with the Bureau and, by extension, the intelligence community demanding written answers here. What's your perspective on how best to navigate? Thanks, Yoel. The line between misinformation and distorting propaganda is thin. Are we comfortable with so many companies receiving so many support reports from a more aggressive government? The CIA has yet to comment on the nature of its relationship to tech companies like Twitter. Twitter had no input into anything I did or wrote. These searches were carried out by third parties, so what I saw could be limited. Watch Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, and Lee Fang in this space for more on issues ranging from COVID-19 to Twitter's relationship to Congress and more. One moment. Okay. Lastly, we have David Zweig. 7 hours ago. So this was released this morning. Now, again, if I somehow have skipped a batch of Twitter files, let me know. They seem to have been coming about every 2 days lately, which is mind-numbing for someone trying to create content twice a week. I do want to say one thing, though. Excuse me. It's pretty much what everyone has suspected all along. Like, the narratives are controlled, if not by the algorithms, then government agencies reaching in, talking to people, and saying this is what we don't want people talking about. And you create a Russian boogeyman. You create a misinformation boogeyman. And here we go. So now, here we go. Twitter Files number 10. The Twitter Files, how Twitter rigged the COVID debate by censoring info that was true but inconvenient to government policy, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, and by suppressing ordinary users, including some sharing the CDC's own data. So far, the Twitter Files have focused on evidence of Twitter's secret blacklists, how the company functioned as a kind of a subsidiary for the FBI, and how executives rewrote the platform's rules to accommodate their own political desires. What we have yet to cover is COVID. This reporting for the Free Press is one piece of that important story. The United States government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID-19. Internal files at Twitter that I viewed while on assignment for the FP showed that both Trump and Biden administrators directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's pandemic content according to their wishes. The onset of the pandemic, according to meeting notes, the Trump administration was especially concerned about panic buying, and they came looking for help from the tech companies to combat misinformation about runs on grocery stores. But there were runs on grocery stores. Areas of focus included conspiracies around 5G cell towers, runs on grocery stores, and misinformation that could stoke panic buying and behaviors. Coverage here, documents here and here. It wasn't just Twitter. The meetings with Trump White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and others. Some of the companies not Twitter gathered open source information from researchers. Our teams fed this information to Twitter policy enforcement teams. When the Biden administration took over, one of their first meeting requests with Twitter executives was on COVID. The focus was on anti-vaxxer accounts, especially Alex Berenson. Wow. to see, for Alex Berenson to see himself by name listed as someone to be censored. In the summer of 2021, President Biden said social media companies were killing people for allowing vaccine misinformation. Berenson was suspended hours after Biden's comments and kicked off the platform the following month. Berenson sued and then settled with Twitter. In the legal process, Twitter was compelled to release certain internal communications which showed direct White House pressure on the company to take action on Berenson. Wow. And then here's Alex Berenson's Substack. Feel free to go look at it. A December 2022 summary of meetings with the White House by Lauren Culbertson, Twitter's U.S. head of public policy, adds new evidence of the White House's pressure campaign and cements it repeatedly attempted to directly influence the platform. Culbertson wrote that the Biden team was very angry that Twitter had not been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts. They wanted Twitter to do more. So not only were they more aggressive on the Russian misinfo, they weren't being more aggressive on the COVID misinfo. Twitter executives did not fully capitulate to Biden's team's wishes. An extensive review of internal communications at the company revealed employees often debating moderation cases in great detail and with more care than was shown by the government towards free speech. But Twitter did suppress views, many from doctors and scientific experts, that conflicted with official positions of the White House. As a result, legitimate findings and questions that would have expanded the public debate went missing. There were 3 serious problems with Twitter's process. First, much of the content moderation was conducted by bots trained on machine learning and AI, impressive in their engineering, yet still too crude for such nuanced work. Second, contractors in places like the Philippines also moderated content. They were given decision trees to aid in the process, but tasking non-experts to adjudicate tweets on complex topics like myocarditis and mask efficacy data was designed for a significant error rate. Third, most importantly, the buck stopped with higher-level employees at Twitter who chose inputs for the bots and the decision trees and subjectively decided escalated cases and suspensions. As it is with all people and institutions, there were individual and collective bias. With COVID, this bias bent heavily toward establishment dogmas. Inevitably, dissent yet legitimate content was labeled as misinformation, and the accounts of doctors and others were suspended both for tweeting opinions and demonstrably true information. Exhibit A, Dr. Martin Koldorf, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School, tweeted reviews at odds with the U.S. public health authorities and the American left, the political affiliation of nearly the entire staff of Twitter. Internal emails show an intent to action by a moderator saying Koldorf's tweet violated the company's COVID-19 misinformation policy and claimed he shared false information. Excuse me. But Koldorf's statement was an expert's opinion, one which also happened to be in line with vaccine policies in numerous other countries, yet it was deemed as false information by Twitter moderators merely because it differed from CDC guidelines. After Twitter took action, Koldorf's tweet was slapped with a misleading label, and all replies and likes were shut off, throttling the tweet's ability to be seen and shared by many people, the ostensibly core function of the platform. In my review of internal files, I found countless instances of tweets labeled as misleading or taken down entirely, sometimes triggering account suspension simply because they veered from CDC guidance or differed from establishment views. A tweet by Kelly Kiga, a self-proclaimed public health fact-checker with 18K followers, was flagged as misleading, and replies liked and disabled even though it displayed the CDC's own data. Internal records showed that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it had received many tattles, what the system amusingly called reports from users. Really, they call them tattles. That triggered a manual review by a human who, despite the tweet showing actual CDC data, nevertheless labeled it misleading. Tellingly, the tweet by Kelly was labeled misleading was a reply to a tweet that contained actual misinformation. COVID has never been the leading cause of death from disease in children. Yet that tweet remains on the platform without a misleading label. I don't know if you could see that, but yeah, where this little red arrow is, says since December 2021, COVID has been a leading cause, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Whether by humans or algorithms, content that was contrarian but true was still subject to getting flagged or suppressed. Oh, but still my beating fucking heart. Like we didn't realize. This tweet was labeled misleading even though the owner of this account was referring to results of a published study. Wow. Andrew Bostom, a Rhode Island physician, was permanently suspended from Twitter after receiving multiple strikes for misinformation. One of his strikes was for a tweet referring to the results from a peer-reviewed study on mRNA. A review of Twitter log files revealed that an internal audit conducted after Bostom's attorney contacted Twitter found that only one of Bostom's 5 violations were valid. So get a lawyer. Get a lawyer. They might be able to find your invalid strikes here. The one Boston tweet found to still be in violation cited data that was legitimate but inconvenient to the public health establishment's narrative about the risks of flu versus the risks of COVID in children. Jeez. That this tweet was not only flagged by a bot, but its violation manually affirmed by a staff member is telling of both the algorithmic and human bias at play. Boston's account was suspended for months and finally restored on Christmas Day. Another example of human bias run amok was the reaction to this tweet by Donald Trump. Many Trump tweets led to extensive internal debates, and this one was no different. In a surreal exchange, Jim Baker, at the time Twitter's deputy general counsel, asked why telling people not to be afraid was a violation of Twitter's COVID-19 policy. Yoel Roth had to explain that optimism wasn't misinformation. Wow. Wow. Remember Kelly with the CDC data tweet? Twitter's response to her is clarifying. We will prioritize review and labeling of content that could lead to increased exposure or transmission. Twitter made a decision, via the political leanings of senior staff and government pressure, that the public health authorities' approach to the pandemic, prioritizing mitigation over other concerns, was, quote, the science. Information that challenged that view, such as showing harms of vaccines, or that could be perceived as downplaying the risks of COVID, especially to children, was subject to moderation and even suppression, no matter whether such views were correct or adopted abroad. What might this pandemic and its aftermath have looked like if there had not been a more open debate on Twitter and other social media platforms, not to mention the mainstream press about the origins of COVID's, lockdowns, and the true risks of COVID in kids and much more? Thanks to Schellenberger, Woodhouse, Fang, and the team in the FP for reporting this story. An expanded version of this thread is now available at the FP. And then here's the link, how Twitter rigged the COVID debate. So that's the Twitter files, folks. That's the Twitter files. We are now caught up to this morning on the Twitter files story, and I must say, none of this is surprising. Not a bit of this has been a bit surprising to me. Now, the big $1 million question is now Republicans are about to take control of the House of Representatives. Are they going to do a damn thing about it? I mean, granted, they don't have the Senate or the presidency, so it's not like they could push through much, but they could go into a much deeper investigation than these 5 journalists who've been covering this story. And if you haven't seen, there's been some, I don't want to call it infighting, but some disagreement between Barry Weiss and Elon Musk. I think that's why she's no longer covering some of these Twitter files. She seems to have gotten the boot. We're coming up on almost an hour, folks. I'm gonna... Well, no. Let me think here. I want to cover just a little bit of the Kari Lake versus Maricopa. And so day one, we saw the bombshells. If you didn't watch my previous video, there were freaking bombshells from affidavits of people at the third-party warehousing center talking about people bringing in ballots from home being a perk. Like, this is a perk. Bringing in ballots from home is a perk of working at the third-party warehousing center for ballots. You know, a lot of this was ultimately deemed irrelevant. But you're not asking the right question. And that is, what is the proper chain of custody? Now, sure, you could verify those ballots to some degree. But if you're not doing a full signature verification, which is one of the things that got dismissed before the trial, they weren't allowed to really discuss signature verification. But it's this idea that now, well, none of this matters because we can always go back and signature verify these later. Yet Kari Lake's not allowed to bring up signature verification as one of the problems. You'll have to forgive me. I've got an issue. Okay. So, yeah, none of these things are a problem because we can go back and verify them later by their signatures. And, oh, by the way, that's the one thing we're not going to let you talk about. Pretty corrupt. And again, they tried to claim that the ballot printer issue wasn't a problem because, A, there was no evidence. There's no, we didn't get all the people, we didn't film people leaving the lines after waiting for 2 hours. There wasn't, we didn't get evidence of those people leaving the lines, so that didn't matter. And the missized ballots that wouldn't be read by the machine didn't matter because what we were going to do is staple a duplicated ballot to it. And even though we had the witness testify that he found duplicated ballots without the originals, well, that's not a problem because at least people got to vote. And that vote got counted. Even though the paper trail's fucked up. So, yeah, I wish. So let's jump right into this, actually. I'm going to try to find... Okay. Sorry, folks. I'm going to need to put this on hold for just a minute. I'm having some issues. Okay, back. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, my health is not doing well this week. I'm going to a specialist about the numbness in my left arm that has, caused me some issues. Anywho, okay, so let's get back into, last time I had pretty good luck with Drew Hernandez's feed, so let's see what he's got on this subject. Okay, we had Kenneth Meyer.
Observe any of the events that occurred on Election Day.
That's correct.
You gave some testimony on the reported wait times of Maricopa County. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What did you do to verify the accuracy of Maricopa County's data?
I relied on the data that was reported by the county.
So you did nothing to verify the accuracy of that data, correct?
That's correct.
Were you in Maricopa County?
So here we go. The witness that they say was supposed to be a witness to all this
Or some
did nothing to verify what he was told. Then here we go. Here's the guy. Now, this was the guy who on day one said that they weren't aware of an issue with the printers. And now,
on Election Day in 2022, were there issues with some of the county's ballot-on-demand printers?
Yes, there were some issues with some of our printers.
And can you describe
now he's known the whole
what
time.
those issues were?
So we are in the middle of our root cause analysis still on this.
On election
Documentation of any inquiry about this fit to print issue?
I don't know if there's any documentation.
So you said you performed a root cause analysis to determine how these problems arose on Election Day?
We're in the process of performing a root cause analysis.
And as part of that root cause analysis, you determined that there was this fit to print issue in 3 locations, correct?
That's correct.
And again, you did not mention this in your testimony yesterday, did you?
I did not.
Did you publish anywhere that there was this shrink to fit issue after the election?
We've not.
So you didn't tell the public, hey, we've discovered. I mean, you're performing a root cause analysis and you find out that there was this shrink to fit issue that gave rise to problems in the tabulators, and you did not inform the public about this.
We're still in the process of our root cause analysis.
Okay.
Which means we found some shit, but we still ain't found shit, so we're not going to tell you. And all this was brought up and then, again, dismissed. By the way, Drew Hernandez did an interview with Carrie Lake after all this.
Don't vote on day one of political malpractice. Who goes out and tells their voters, don't vote on day one of voting, early voting, day 2, day 3, all the way up to day 26 of early voting?
Because it's called Election Day. This is one of the attorneys for the defense, not one of Carrie Lake's attorneys. It's one of, I think it's the county here. Katie Hobbs' lawyer, according to Drew Hernandez.
Voting. Wait to the last second. That's political malpractice. You reap what you sow. Your Honor, the burden has not been...
It's called Election Day. And so here's the thing, you fucking piece of scum. If it's legal, then why not? If it's valid, then why not? Why couldn't I tell my supporters to do something that is very valid and legal during an election? Why wouldn't I do that? Vote on election day. That's to say that that's political malpractice when all the other things that has been talked about in this court proceeding, ballots being warehoused by a third-party vendor, ballots being inserted at the third-party vendor, ballots being moved without chain of custody slips, ballots being found duplicated with no original, ballots being found with chain of custody but nothing to seal the box of ballots, or ballot packets, excuse me.
Matt, when people come into this courtroom
None of that's political malfeasance.
without evidence,
But voting on election day
it
is.
should be a day of reckoning. And this has been happening all over the country, Your Honor, and it's got to stop. And it's got to stop right now. And the place to stop it is right here in your courtroom, Your Honor, right here in Mesa, Arizona. This has got to stop. We got to get back to respecting elections because that's all we have, Your Honor. Different religions, different creeds, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. There's only one thing that makes us Americans, and that's we believe in choosing our own election.
Okay, but we also believe in fucking justice. Truth, justice, and the American way. Fucking Superman said it. Before Superman started getting written by these kind of people. Right here. Justice is a key part of that. And when you're pointing out that, oh, people can insert ballots here, insert ballots there, people can get disenfranchised, lines were 2 hours down the block. That's not justice. That's not part of the American way to want to seek justice for the wrongdoings in our democratic election process. For our republic.
Our own rulers, our own governors, our own mayors, our own presidents. And we do that through elections. And because of our forefathers' experience, those elections are split up. The 50 different states and all the different counties. And the legislature makes the rules, the counties follow the rules, you carry out the election, and you live with the results.
But you didn't follow the rules. Not only did you not follow the rules, but this election had a cloud of doubt cast over it when your client, as Secretary of State, decided she would handle her own election that she was a contestant in. That's like Melania Trump entering Miss America and Donald Trump having to say what the final outcome is. You can't run your own race.
If you lose, you live to fight another day. You don't go into court and spew conspiracy theories and spill sour grapes. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. And I don't think Drew has... Okay, so let's bring this up. Let me see if I could find the prosecution closing arguments. Okay, they have an external... all I can find right now is an external link to Rumble here. I don't necessarily want to watch this whole video, but let's see what we've got. This is from the Kerry Lake Rumble channel, and it's not loading, so let's... I love you, Rumble, but come on now. It's an interesting platform. I'm hoping it becomes lead tech, but...
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor has heard 2 days of testimony, sworn testimony. Some of it doesn't make sense. Some of it does. The law in Arizona is that an election challenger must put forward evidence sufficient to show that the outcome is wrong or at least uncertain. And that is the seminal case of Finley v. Sorensen. Plaintiffs have met that standard. There's just a little over 17,000 votes out of nearly 1.6 million that separate the candidates. That's less than 0.06%. The two issues that Your Honor directed plaintiff to support, that was intentional conduct with the tabulators in terms of the malfunctions, the rejections that occurred on Election Day.
Now, mind you, their argument, the entire argument that Kari Lake's expert brought up was that, and I wish I had the clip from day 2, where their expert refuted the previous expert, but didn't even try. They didn't even try. They conflated the issue. They gaslit the issue. And by the way, at the end of this stream, I'm going to go live again with a special, in my robe, a special After Dark Patriot Philosopher stream on gaslighting. So stay tuned. But on day 1, their expert said that there are only 2 ways that that error could have occurred. And that is either a change in the printer settings, which had to have been an admin access level, or a change in the file settings, which had to have come from a change with admin access level. Now, again, nobody brought this up again for the rest of the trial. They said that somehow the printer settings were accidentally changed to a fit to page, a print to fit the page setting. Now, if you go back to what that first expert said, that can only be done at admin access level, which means the thing pops up, you got to type your password or whatever and approve that change. It meant it had to have been, whether or not intentionally done to affect the election, it was at least intentionally done in the moment to change what was happening to that particular printer at that particular time, which had an effect on the election. That's what Kari Lake's team is arguing here. That there was an intentional act that happened that ultimately affected the election. Whether intentionally affected the election, that's a separate issue. But they acted intentionally, and because of that intentional act, the election was affected.
That was intentional conduct with the tabulators in terms of the malfunctions, the rejections that occurred on Election Day. And also the chain of custody issue. We've done that, Your Honor. We heard some startling testimony. I had to kind of regroup here from what my prepared closing remarks. And that startling testimony from Mr. Jarrett today, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll say why. And this is in terms of whether when we showed through the inspection of ballots, a random selection of ballots from six voting centers, not 3, 6. Mr. Parikh found evidence, ballots that had 19-inch images imprinted on them on 20-inch sized paper. He found that in all 6 vote centers that were randomly selected. Mr. Jarrett yesterday testified under oath when he was asked that could it happen or did it happen that a 19-inch image was imprinted on a 20-inch piece of paper, and he testified no. And not only that, his counsel, Mr. Liddy, went with the shrink to fit excuse, and he never said, oh yeah, that's what happened. We've known about this since shortly after the election, and we're doing a root cause analysis. None of this, it doesn't make sense. Another thing that doesn't make sense, they're doing a root cause analysis now, yet he says that, well, this has happened in 3 prior elections. Why are you doing a root cause analysis on this if this same event, this shrink to fit issue, arose in 3 prior elections? The other thing that doesn't make sense,
3 times, and you still aren't ready to fix it. And you had to have
about this
admin
shrink to
access.
fit excuse, is that it's illegal under Arizona law to modify a ballot after it's been set.
There you go.
You just can't do that. And they're saying that it happened not only in this election, but in 3 prior elections? It just doesn't make sense, Your Honor. The other thing that doesn't make sense is that somehow, and you heard Mr. Macias, he kind of equivocated on this shrink to fit argument about whether you could get it to exactly 19 inches. So all of a sudden, there are supposedly techs that are running around making modifications on election day, which, by the way, has happened in 3 prior elections, and they're all getting it to exactly 19 inches for shrink to fit. Random techs just kind of doing things on their own. This doesn't make sense, Your Honor. And I'm actually troubled to even be talking about this. The idea that when I questioned Mr. Jarrett about this issue, and he said unequivocally it could not happen, and his counsel then trying to clean this up said, well, what about, shrink to fit? That he didn't immediately say, yeah, that was it, when he's supposedly known about it since shortly after the election? It doesn't make sense, Your Honor. The same thing with respect to the conflicting testimony regarding whether it's chaos or massive disruption that occurred on Election Day with 200 plus declarants. You have Mr. Barris who's doing exit polls and talking to people on Election Day, news reports. You have other witnesses, Mr. Sonnenclair, who testified that they visited, he and his fellow roving observers went to 115 vote centers, the same thing. So you have independent sources talking about massive chaos at well over 50+%, about 59%. By the county's own admission, it would be 30, about a third, 70 vote centers.
So I want to remind you, this judge listened to this breakdown and then afterwards heard the thing you just heard about how, well, we can't change it because we have to have faith in our elections, blah, 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 and chose that argument over this legal argument right here, over the facts. They chose feeling. This judge right here you see on screen chose feelings over facts. Now look, I understand judges are going to be reluctant to overturn an election that has been called. I don't blame the judge for just saying no. It's too ticky-tacky, too close. There, and too much time has passed. I get it. Excuse me. But if there ever were a reason, like, to me, this is the closest we've come to a fair analysis of at least a statewide election that could have had a chance of being overturned. I mean, we had the whole Bush versus Gore thing, and that the Supreme Court kind of had to step in on that, and that was a whole disaster. And I think that's one reason, if you've read some of my past writings, I have a whole theory on political, the boy who cried wolf politically, in that if something gets used one time as a political tactic, then it's kind of less valid to try to use it again. Whether it be impeachment, they tried to impeach Clinton. And then, so since then, impeachment's been kind of a fucked up thing. And, nobody wanted to impeach anybody until Trump came around. And then it's like, it was scummy. It was scummy. Anyway, let me skip forward just a little bit more.
This just doesn't happen, Your Honor. We have independent sources that say Election Day was chaotic and was a mess. And it absolutely disenfranchised voters. There were long lines everywhere. And we put forward specific, compelling evidence of quantifiable shifts in votes through Mr. Barris, a range of 15,000 to 29,000 votes, Republican votes. And he said that was a conservative estimate. The defendants put up this expert from the University of Wisconsin. And his bias, for one thing, was completely obvious. But he had to admit that the county, which bases its whole election plan on modeling turnout, they had a high model of 290,000 projected for 2022 with a low model of 250,000. And as you heard testimony, that low model was performed prior to the election, as it must, and it did not account for any kind of election day chaos. So that was a perfect election, just with a little bit lower turnout, in a time when everybody knew Republican turnout on election day, because even his counsel repeatedly said, Republican leaders were telling people to not vote by mail and to come out on election day. And guess what? They did. And then just so happened that pandemonium ensued. And whether you believe it's a shrink to fit allegation in 3 vote centers, when we know we have direct evidence that it's in all six of the 6 that Mr. Parikh inspected, had that same 19-inch ballot image imprinted on a 20-inch piece of paper. There's no doubt that caused mayhem. There's no doubt that it caused long lines.
And there's no doubt that it was intentional. Had to have been
Says,
semi-intentional.
well, I looked at the wait time data from Maricopa County, and it says that the wait lines weren't that bad. Well, we have sworn testimony and charts in the record that shows they're far more. And Maricopa County has repeatedly downplayed and said that, as pretty well run election, Your Honor.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You don't get this kind of disconnect.
Oh, got to get the pillow guy off screen. Anyway, he kind of just goes on and on with the same. Nope. Same it doesn't make sense argument, because it doesn't. And, these things don't make sense. And ultimately, that was a losing argument. Ultimately, the data was considered non-evidence, or not important enough evidence to overturn an election, which is okay. I mean, it happens. Now, Kari Lake has since said that she plans on appealing this decision, taking this to the appeals court, and continuing to fight. But I think we all know that the chances of Kari Lake ever becoming governor through a court process is slim to none. I mean, it's kind of like Andrew Branca says, appeals are for losers. Well, I mean, you've already lost 2 battles. Now you're going into a third. I mean, let's not get our hopes up here. I mean, I do have hope, and I do hope that she kicks some ass, if for no other reason than I love the way the fucking media covers Kari Lake, and I love the way she interacts with the media. I would love to see that in a governor here in the United States. So, here we are. I actually burned through the content a lot faster than I thought I would. And since we currently don't have a live audience, I'm thinking about going ahead and ending this stream at 5 p.m. Make it an hour and a half show. Just about. Yep. I'm thinking about going ahead and ending this stream and preparing for the next one. Folks, I'm ill. So yeah, if you've been able to bear with me through the muting and blowing my nose and coughing, thank you for hanging in there with me. I'm glad I finally got caught up on those two topics. We can cover some of the topics I've been neglecting, like Yoel Roth. I mean, I guess I could do some of that now, but no, I want to be able to advertise that slightly ahead of time. I want to get into Yoel Roth and some of his creepy behaviors and some other things. In a future live stream here. Let's real quick do a examination of the Twitter trending. Klaus Schwab is trending. All these NFL quarterbacks are trending. World Economic Forum is trending, allegedly. Ben Shapiro. Why is Ben Shapiro trending? I don't know. Doesn't appear to be anything super interesting. Southwest Airlines is trending. I don't buy that. I think that's a pay to trend. Okay, so, sorry. Got sidetracked. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this stream now. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this, leave me a comment below. Let me know what I could have done differently, other than the getting sidetracked scrolling the Twitter trending topics or covering Yoel Roth. Yoel Roth is coming, folks. That show will be coming shortly. It might even be this Wednesday if nothing important happens. But knowing my luck, we're going to be getting more Twitter files dumped on us by then and have to sidetrack. I may wind up doing like a New Year's, like some sort of New Year's type thing that next weekend. Once again, I tend to have more time over the holidays. I wish I could have done something more productive with it this time around, but I'm hoping next week I'll be able to give you yet another special stream. We'll do some more of these Patriot Philosopher topics. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Yoel Roth, Patriot Philosopher. Like I said, let me know down in the comments below something you'd like to see in this channel. Or find me on Twitter, my Twitter handle, my Facebook page, my Rumble page, my Locals page. They're all linked down in the description. Please check me out. Please go down there, click on all those things down in the description, and then come back here, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Please give me that thumbs up. Push that subscribe button if you want to see my future streams, including the one that's about to happen here in about 15 minutes. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Love y'all. Don't get any on you, and if you do, rub that shit in real good. Take care, folks. I will see you next time here on Miles Culture Plate.